Hello everyone, Joshua Myers here, and today I'm going to be ranking the Saw franchise from worst to best. Let the games begin. Hello everyone, Joshua Myers here.
And I'm Abe.
I'm Jay.
And Josh too.
Now before I get on with my ranking, I would like to say I'm sorry it took me this long to basically finally do my ranking and to basically, in a sense, conclude the Saw franchise review series. Yeah, I don't know, I guess I kind of got burned out of the Saw movies for a while. I just wanted a break between after I did my review of Saw 3D and to this, so I don't know, I just wanted a break. Plus, also, this works pretty well in my favor considering the fact that Spiral from the Book of Saw is coming out next month, so this works out perfectly in terms of the scheduling.
Hello, Detective Banks. When was the last time you saw your father?
Also, on a quick side note, I would like to say that also too, some of my reviews got removed, and it's because, okay, here's the thing. When I was trying to join the YouTube Partner Program, which I tried to a while ago, they didn't accept me in because they said I had way too much copywritten material on my channel. So I tried to remove a lot that said, oh, it had copywritten stuff and everything. And I accidentally, I didn't realize it, but I accidentally deleted some of my reviews. Actually, quite a bit of my reviews, actually. Some of them including, some of the ones from my 31 Days of Halloween review series last year, my review of Saw 3D, my review of the Invisible Man remake, well, mine and Josh's review, my review of Phantasm, so I'm not sure whether to save those for this 31 Days of Halloween review series, or at least for Saw 3D, just to basically get that done and that, but it was such a long video and took such a long time to make, I just honestly do not know. It kind of took me a while to get to here. Another one that was accidentally deleted was my review of Saw 5, but I recently re-uploaded that. In fact, I think it's actually a shorter review than my original upload of it, because I've actually gotten better with editing and actually gotten better in terms of what stuff to cut out and what stuff to leave in. But I hope you guys enjoy this ranking video. And also, before I get started, I would like to mention that this ranking video was requested by Robbie Clark. He wanted me to review all the Saw franchise. I did that. It was actually quite fun to kind of go back and revisit these movies and also discuss them after I watched them. I could tell this is going to be a fun ranking. I'm not sure how different my ranking is going to be compared to you guys. I mean, you guys may agree with my ranking, you guys may disagree with me, and, that's kind of the fun thing about it. If you do disagree with me, let me know your guys' ranking down in the comments section, and just don't be a complete douchebag and then be like, oh no, you fucking suck because you didn't put this movie up here. It's like, come on. These are just movies. Get over it. Let's begin with the Saw franchise ranking. Coming in at number 8 for me is honestly going to be Saw 4. And the reason why I picked Saw 4 on this low is the list. Now here's the thing. My relationship to this movie is kind of, I guess you could say, lukewarm at best. I can't really explain it. I explained it in my review. There's sometimes I find the film decent, just decent. I never find it to be okay or one of the better entries in this franchise, but at least it's meh to, man, this movie fucking sucks. And part of the reason of that is I just felt like this is definitely one of the more cluttered films in the series, because you're having several different storylines coexisting with one another. You have probably the most flashbacks out of the entire franchise, and a lot of them are kind of not in chronological order or anything like that, so it does kind of make things confusing in terms of where you are in the film. You get introduced to new characters that, to be honest, they don't really do, at least right then, a good job of making care for them or find them remotely interesting, at least just by themselves, even excluding the flashbacks. The flashbacks do make some of these characters a tad bit more interesting, but just only by a smidge margin. That's, like characters like Jill Tuck, Jigsaw's ex-wife, it's like. Plus, the performance by Betsy Russell is not really that great in this movie. So, I mean, especially when you put her up with, like, somebody as good as an actor like Tobin Bell and that, it's like, you could really see just kind of on what level of this acting spectrum she is compared to Tobin Bell. And then you get introduced, like, reintroduced to characters like Mark Hoffman, who was introduced in Saw 3 and was barely in there. I honestly forgot he was even in Saw 3 the time he jumped on to the rest of this franchise. And, they don't really make him all that interesting as well. The later Saw films, I think, kind of make him a bit more interesting of a character. But if we were just to look at Saw 4 as its own film, knowing you got all these different flashbacks and either introductions to characters or reintroductions to characters to make them have much more of a role. You also got like 2 different subplots too. So you got the detective subplot trying to figure out who's this new Jigsaw, or if it's a copycat or something like that. And then you got with Officer Rigg, who is probably at this point in the franchise the last remaining character from the first, the previous Saw films, like the earlier Saw films. And, it's like, and even his, the reasoning for why he's being put in these games is honestly not very clear and kind of weak compared to other characters' reasons for why Jigsaw put them in these games. It's like, as far, the only bit of clue you get in terms of why he's put in these traps and stuff like that, these games, is because he just has an obsession of saving people. I'm like, seriously? Seriously, Jigsaw? I mean, he's a cop. His entire job is based on trying to save people. So, now, what I kind of got from it is maybe it's because his obsession to help people has kind of gotten him into some, him and his entire crew into, dangerous situations, which could have been avoided. But it's not really made clear in this movie on that. So, and on that too, Officer Riggs is basically given one of the most easiest tasks to do by the end of this film. And he fucks it up. He totally fucks it up. And the whole thing he's supposed to do is, do not go through this fucking door. He had at least a few seconds. He just waited a few seconds. He would have saved Detective Matthews. And he would have saved Hoffman. And speaking of the twist endings in these films, the twist ending is probably one of the only positive thing I have to say about Saw 4, because I think it is an interesting concept, but I just don't think they quite nailed it here, and that is the fact that the entirety, aside from the opening and the ending with the last shot, the autopsy scene, takes place during the events of Saw 3. That was meant to be the main twist, and I kind of like that. It's kind of takes what we've seen with the twist ending in Saw 2, where the events of the, gas house trap and everything should take place hours before the events of with Jigsaw and Eric Matthews. It's kind of like that, but kind of does a different spin on it. But I just think it wasn't quite executed well, and then all that too with the other secondary twist, which they didn't even say it was meant to be a twist or anything like that, which kind of is why it bumps it down for me on my list, is that Mark Hoffman, who you barely get to know as a character or anything like that, and both Saw 3 and Saw 4, even though he was featured more in Saw 4, is the new Jigsaw. He was working with Amanda, he was working with John this entire time. So, and he's now the de facto Jigsaw from here on out. carrying on John Kramer's legacy, and I didn't really care for that, at least until the later sequels, because at least they kind of develop on him a bit more in the later sequels, but I wish there was a lot more development on him as a character in general in this movie. Whew, I kind of got on a bit of rant. This, like, just honestly, this section could fill the whole entire rant video in Saw 4 by itself, so. Coming in at number 7 is Saw 3D, the final chapter. Honestly, for me, this kind of ended up being kind of close to being the worst Saw film for me, mostly just because it is so unfocused. It's almost as if it doesn't know what it wants to be. Now, the reason it's bumped a little bit higher than Saw 4 is because I think it does have some entertainment value in that, but man, it is like first of all, you got like characters that we don't give a shit about coming in, like Detective like Matt Gibson or whoever the fuck he is. I don't even care knowing that his acting is like, whew, probably some of the worst in this franchise. It's like, he looks crazier than a sack full of cats. Like, oh! And also, why the fuck the blood is pink? Why is there pink blood in this all? Like, no joke. Like, to be honest, I feel like you could pretty much show this film to younger people, like kids even, just because of the fact that the gore isn't very realistic. And I don't know why the blood is pink. My only guess is maybe because, you know, it needed to be so that the process of converting it to 3D would be easier on them or something like that. I don't know. And that's another thing too. It just felt like the whole 3D thing was just thrown on there as a gimmick. And I know that the fact that was because through digging up behind the scenes stuff and that, it seemed like they really just added the 3D just to make more money. Because the last film didn't make as nearly as much money as they wanted to. 3D would add cost to ticket sales and that's what they did, with no thought or effort put into the 3D at all. There's even a scene where, by the end of the movie, a character throws a hacksaw at the screen like this. And it's a CG hacksaw, like, and knowing that too, for a film that's meant to be like the final film of this franchise and that, it really didn't answer a whole lot of questions. In fact, if anything, it kind of gave us more questions that have been left unanswered to this day. Jigsaw didn't answer these questions. Spiral, for what I've seen, is probably not more than likely going to answer these questions. The kind of announced, like the kind of rumored Saw 10 that's been kind of floating about, probably won't answer these questions really, which I'll discuss on that on a news video at some point. The fact that Saw 10 has been announced, supposedly. Game over! No! Coming in at number 6 for me, honestly, would be Saw 3, which is the film that meant to, I guess you assume, was meant to kind of end the Saw franchise originally. And, you know, some people would probably have this a bit higher on their ranking, but for me, I have it this low because of, well, it's kind of tough for me. There are some elements of Saw 3 I do really love. Mostly just the aspects of John Kramer and Amanda Young and their kind of, you know, relationship as kind of mentor-student, almost father-daughter like almost. And I kind of like that. And their acting is really good in this. Both Tobin Bell and Shawnee Smith. You could tell they have that kind of chemistry in that. But at the same time, too, you get put with characters that are just completely, like, frustrating characters. Mostly in the character of Jeff Dimlin, who at first could be maybe an interesting character. You know, like, basically his son died tragically in that. And he wants to get the person responsible for the loss of his son in that. And that sounds interesting, but they don't really do 100% that much with this character, at least in regards to that. And this is one of the characters in the franchise that makes stupid decisions upon stupid decisions. You know, he is taxed to basically try to save these people and learn to forget, but he is not willing on doing so. And then he kind of decides that at the last minute, try to save them and everything, but it's too late. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what this film wanted to do with this. If you wanted to have a character that was completely like so full of rage and vengeance and is not willing to forgive whatsoever, then go with that. Go with that. Show that in each trap he does not give a flying fuck. And by this point too, his main target at this point now is John Kramer. And by the time you get to the kind of end scene where most people have probably seen this movie by now, Jeff kills John Kramer and that, you know, and everything out like rage. You know, it's like that would at least make a bit more sense. But no, because of the fact they add in those last few minutes of Jeff trying to save these people, it's just like, it just makes him out to be a complete total dumbass. And it's like, now there's one time he actually does end up saving someone, and that is the judge. And that actually was a bit interesting that, you know, in a Saw movie, somebody actually saves someone, and it's kind of going along with the games, but then he's killed off once they get to Jeff's son's killer, and that as Jeff is trying to save the man in the rack trap, you know, he unintentionally kills the judge.
Got the key.
Whoops. And I will get to say this too, one of the elements of each of these films are equally good is the music by Charlie Clouser. He's composed every single Saw film to this date, and is even composing the music for the new film Spiral. So, and his music has been the one constantly good thing about each film in this franchise. So, his music gets passed on each thing. So I do have a lot of issues with Saw 3. There are some kind of shiny moments, mostly again with the kind of relationship that you see with John Kramer and Amanda, Robin Bell and Johnny Smith, and they give a pretty good performance. But that's really about it. And this is honestly where I think the franchise should have ended.
She only has a limited supply of air, and if you want to get her back, you'll have to play a game.
Coming in at my number 5 on the list is Saw 5. Now, I know most people would probably have this film lower on the spectrum, but for me, you know, I think it was better than Saw 4. I thought it was better than Saw 3 even. Mostly because they delved into the character of Mark Hoffman a lot more, which I wish they did in Saw 4, but I digress. And in Saw 5, they kind of make him into a much more interesting character with the fact that he lost his sister and everything. You know, like his sister's boyfriend basically killed her and everything. And, you know, because... And his sister's killer was meant to serve 25 years, but his sentence was reduced on a technicality, and that kind of drove Hoffman to have a bit of a vengeance quarrel with Seth Baxter, who is his sister's ex-boyfriend, and basically sets up a Jigsaw trap in that to make it look like it was Jigsaw and not him, and basically designed to kill Seth Baxter. And that is a pretty cool opening scene with the pendulum trap. It's like all practical in camera. So you do get some interesting moments with Hoffman, even how he is connected with John Kramer, like how they met, and that whole scene was pretty good. So also too, I think Costas Mandylor is a little bit doing a bit better in terms of acting wise in this film than he did in the previous films. Also, the trap is pretty interesting too, like at least the concept. It's kind of back to the group trap like Saw like Saw 2, where everybody had to work together and that. And I think the way they did is kind of interesting, but still, again, comes down to execution, and I think it could have been executed a little bit better. I honestly think the group trap in Saw 2 was a lot better than in this, but we'll get to that when I get to my ranking. But then you still got some acting that's kind of like, meh, like, for example, Betsy Russell as Jill Tuck. She's still not, like, great in terms of that bar. She's not shown as much in this movie, but yeah, it's like... And I do think there's ways you could have made the whole idea of Jigsaw's ex-wife a kind of an interesting character, which I plan on doing in my third Saw film, Saw in Game Part 2, trying to make her character a bit more interesting, and therefore everything that she would prove a bit more meaningful in this franchise, without getting into too much spoiler. But honestly, for me, I don't got much negative to say about Saw 5. Oh, and also I should say too, they also make a character that popped in Saw 4 a lot more interesting too, and honestly kind of a bit more likable with the character of Special Agent Peter Strong. You know, I thought he was a bit more likable in this film, you know, and so yeah, and I found him a bit more interesting as a character. So yeah, so there are some things I think Saw 5 improved upon with Saw 4. And even Saw 3 to extent. Which is why it's sitting comfortably at the 5th spot on my list. Coming in number 4 is Jigsaw, the most recent Saw film before this new one, Spiral. Now, the reason I have it on my 4th spot is because I feel like it did a lot of pretty good things. And now there's some people out there who will not agree with me, because I know there's some people who did not like this film, found it confusing as fuck. But I followed it pretty well and everything like that. I don't know, I guess maybe I'm that big of a Saw fan to where stuff like this doesn't really confuse me as badly. Although, if you want a more confusing fuck Saw film, go back and watch Saw 4 and tell me which one is the more confusing film of the series. But I felt like it did what it wanted to pretty well. You know, this is probably the best looking Saw film in terms of cinematography wise and everything. You know, it's the most cinematic looking Saw film, and even in terms of sound wise, like the music by Charlie Clouser, it's probably the most cinematic versions of these themes he's done. But honestly for me, what brings it down lower, and here's the thing, when I first watched this film, I had no idea what to expect because it was new characters and everything. And I must admit, the twist kind of caught me off by surprise. I had no idea. It was one of the few entries in the franchise where, you know, the twist did surprise me. But yeah, I just honestly like Jigsaw a lot, actually. But the reason it's kind of this low on my kind of more favorable Saw films is because I feel like it just doesn't really do anything that new or interesting with this franchise. It just kind of feels like the same old Saw formula that we've seen done before, and especially after a 7-year hiatus from the last one, Saw 3D, I was expecting a lot more different with this film. You know, because it just kind of seemed like the same stuff, you know, like a group of detectives or whatever, trying to figure out who this copycat is, and all that different stuff. And then you get this main trap, and it's another group trap where they have to work together and all that different stuff. And we've seen this done before. This is basically all the other Saw films, except with just a fresh new coat of paint in terms of like the cinematography and even a bit of the music. And even the music is not that new. I was hoping that Charlie Clouser would bring a little bit new to the table with this film, but no. He kind of, like, there's only a few new tracks in this movie that I really did like. The first one being the track Laser Collar, and the first, like, my favorite track by far, to be honest, is the track called Shotgun, which is towards the end of the movie. And it just sounded so different compared to everything else in the films, while still sounding like, you know, it fits pretty well within this franchise. My second favorite new track would probably have to be the track Laser Collars. Those two tracks, he really doesn't bring anything new to the table. In fact, even the classic Hello Zep theme and that's played at the end of each and every single one of these movies, it's basically just and it just sounds exactly like Zep 6 from Saw 6, except with just adding like towards the high until the last, let's say, minute or so of the track, the original Hello Zep. And that's it. That's literally the only difference with this compared to Zep 6. Otherwise, they might as well have just completely, modernized Zep 6 and had it sound exactly the same, except with a bit more kind of like orchestra type sound. Like, I mean, I like the music, I just think Charlie Krauser didn't really bring anything much new to the table, which I hope he does with Spotlight.
I speak for the dead.
Okay, now we're down to my top 3 favorite films of this franchise. And coming in at number 3 in my list is Saw 6. And the reason why I have it this high on my list is because I feel like it's one of the first few films, then on the later entries and that kind of brings the Saw films back to formula. You get some interesting stuff. Now, I know there's some people who don't like Saw 6, mostly because it gets a bit too politically charged, but I feel like it did in a way that, unlike some movies, like let's say the Black Christmas 2019 remake, which I'll get to that this December, it didn't felt like, compared to all of those, really trying to force it down the audience's throat. I never felt like that, and it didn't came off as biased or anything like that, and it was covering issues that was going on at the time, and you could argue are still going on to today. The whole healthcare system, because let's face it, the healthcare system has been broken for ever since this film came out. It's been broken, it's been mishandled, and that's what this film kind of delves into in that. And I found it really interesting. And knowing that too, the reason I think it doesn't come across as biased or anything is that the main character, besides Jigsaw, that's being placed through this trap, so William Easton, is actually kind of a likable character, actually. You kind of do relate to him and that stuff, and everything. You want to see him make it through, actually. This is one of the few likable main characters in this later half of the franchise, actually. And they don't make him out to be 100% like a bad guy or anything like that. They could have so easily, around this time, made him a villain, almost like a scumbag and that, who screws people over and stuff like that, but that's just how he had his policies made, I don't think he actually intended on them, in terms of, intentionally to screw people over. It's just what he thought was best for his company. So, and I like that. I like that aspect, If this film were made today, it probably, if there was a Saw film made today and was all political and stuff like that, more than likely it would, unless if it's, the film was done with the right people, more than likely it would end up being films like the Black Christmas 2019 remake or something like that, to where, it's completely biased and that, it's so in your face all the time, and, just would be very unwatchable. If this was that kind of case with this film would have been a lot lower on my list, probably where Saw 4 is. But because they chose not to go that route with this film, I really admire that film for it. Plus, it honestly has one of the better renditions of music by Charlie Krauser too. Even Zep 6, which I actually kind of like better than Zep 8 and stuff like that, because again, Zep 8 is just basically a rehash of Zep 6. And I found it to be a new kind of take on the Hell is Zeb theme. But even too, like, the traps are pretty cool. I like the new traps in this film. And yeah, I even like the ending, you know. I feel like also too, this could have been a point in the film series where this could have been the last film of the series as well. But again, it wasn't. We got 3 more films after this. And honestly, I don't have much negatives with this film. This was just one of the better films in the series. So let's move on to my number 2, which I think is even, like, better in a lot of aspects. So let's get right into it. So coming in at number 2 is Saw 2. So the first sequel of this franchise. I think it does pretty good in terms of, like, doing something new, but also still keeping the kind of same flavor and even style of the first Saw film. This is one of the sequels that tries to, you know, not only take what was good about the first movie, but kind of build upon it in that, you know, I think Tobin Bell really showcases how good of an actor he is in this role. And everything, just, like, I could just watch his scenes with, just, like, him and Mark Wahlberg talking. Like, him and Donnie Wahlberg just talking to each other, and that's, like, I could just watch that. Like, that could just be a film on its own, and it would still have been interesting.
We haven't been properly introduced. My name's John.
How do you like to be called Jigsaw?
No. It was the police and the press who coined the nickname Jigsaw. I never encouraged or claimed that. The jigsaw piece I cut from my subjects was only ever meant to be a symbol that subject was missing something. A vital piece of the human puzzle, the survival instinct.
This is all really, really interesting, John. Right now, I'd really like for you to talk to me about...
I am talking to you. You are not listening. Don't forget the rules.
I'm listening to you. All I'm hearing is the same sick fucking bullshit that comes about 2 seconds into every interview I've ever done with one of you fucking people.
Well, that's an interesting approach to police work, isn't it? But you're supposed to be convincing me that I'm your friend, lulling me into a false sense of security so that I'll confide in you.
It's a little hard to follow the manual when you've got my son, John.
The manual? What do you really want to do to me right now, huh? What would you have done 5 years ago, huh? Would you have followed the manual, huh? Would you have broken my jaw with a flashlight?
But they also added this kind of new kind of take on the Saw traps and stuff like that with this gas house, and basically it was one of the first group Saw traps you see in this franchise, and I think probably the best group Saw trap in this franchise. So, and there's so many twists and turns that are pretty good in this film, till the point you get to the end, and it's like, it just basically, you know, does, like, I think it kind of ends nicely, where it kind of is a flip, a little bit of a flip on the ending of the first Saw film. So yeah, and also it kind of reintroduced us to the character Amanda Young, portrayed by Shawnee Smith, and this film kind of, I think, made her a more interesting character, and she would become a more interesting character throughout the franchise, although after Saw 3, they didn't seem to utilize her much until Saw 6, and even then it was just for flashbacks. I kind of wish they utilized Shawnee Smith more in this franchise. But yeah, I have nothing really that negatively to say with this film from what I remember. But yeah, so Saw 2 is my second favorite Saw.
Game over.
I'll fucking kill you! Fucking bitch!
But coming on number 1, just basically down to common deduction, and that is the original Saw by James Wan. Now, some people would put Saw 2 as their favorite film of this franchise, but I think the first one is one of the better films in the series. In fact, it is the best film in the series because it does the whole, you know, kind of mystery thriller aspect the best out of the series. You know, to where you as the audience are meant to, like, kind of try to figure out what is going on throughout like why these two people were placed in this shitful bathroom, which that is iconic look. It's just the bathroom traps iconic. Just basically everything that made the series iconic started here in this movie. So like you got the bathroom trap. You got other traps too that are pretty iconic. Like everybody's, like I think fans' most favorite traps. I know it's my favorite, honestly. The reverse bear trap. So Johnny Smith's trap, that was pretty good. Also stuff like the Billy puppet, the pig mask, just everything that you come to expect with a Saw movie started right here. And it already became such an iconic film in terms of horror. I think honestly, next to the other films, I think this is one of the best looking Saw films in terms of like cinematography and stuff like that. Sure, it's lower budget, but you know, I think it's pretty good and stuff like that. They utilize, James Wan and Leigh Whannell really utilize their lower budget pretty nicely here. And honestly, I kind of respect them for that and everything. And in fact, Saw may actually be I think it's probably my second favorite James Wan movie. It's kind of tied between this and Dead Silence. So, and plus it introduced me to Leigh Whannell, who I really respect as a director now, especially with films like Insidious Chapter 3 and the Invisible Man remake, which was amazing. But I have yet to watch his 2018 film Upgrade. I may do that at some point, because I'm like, I'm just now at the point, everything Leigh Whannell does from here on out as the director, I'm on board. I heard that he's going to do Escape from New York remake, which I'm on board for that. If you guys know, Escape from New York was one of my least favorite John Carpenter movies, if you watch my review on that, and I do think it had interesting concepts, but I think Leigh Whannell could turn those interesting concepts and make a kick-ass movie. So I'm really excited about Leigh Whannell's Escape from New York remake. I hope that happens. And I'll be there first day. But anyway, so introduce all this different stuff, you know, probably has the best music of the franchise, best version of the Hello Zepp theme. Honestly, it's my favorite version. So, even though Charlie Clouser would later go on and try to revamp it and kind of make it bigger and more epic, I feel like, you know, the simplicity of it and everything in this film, honestly, is why it is such an epic score. And of course, it probably has, in my opinion, the best twist ending of this franchise. Still, none of the other films have tried to even come close or even tried to top the ending of this film. So, and I got an idea for an ending for my film that may potentially even top this one. I guess you'll just have to see whether or not that would be the case for you when I release my third Saw film, Saw Endgame Part 2. And know that too, this film kind of made this, like, is kind of solidified this franchise as being, like, up there with my favorite horror franchises. Honestly, it's kind of the tie between this franchise and the Halloween franchise for being my favorite horror film franchises. And I'm saying a lot because I love the Halloween franchise. And all those reasons is why the first Saw film is on this list. If you guys have not seen the original Saw, do yourself a favor, go watch it. They're all on HBO Max, except for Jigsaw. I don't know why Jigsaw isn't on HBO Max. But they're on HBO Max, the first 7 Saw films. So go and watch it, kind of enjoy yourself. Some of you may not like it, you know, but for me, I love the original Saw. Again, which is why it's on the top of my list.
Game over!
So that's it for this video. Tell me in the comments below if you guys agree with my ranking, and if you don't, just please kindly tell me your guys' ranking, how you would rank these films, like from worst to best, or maybe even make your own video and post your video in the comments down below, and I will probably go out and watch it. So again, sorry this kind of took a while for me to do this and that, but I just need a break from these films. I love some of these films. There's just some really bad films in this series. I mean, I'm not like one of those fanboys that just love every single movie of this franchise. I'm not. There's some stinkers, which you've clearly seen. But this is a franchise I do hold in high regard. And one that I hope Spiral would be able to kind of do something new and different with. Which, I do got some thoughts on that second trailer that came out, and some concerns, which me and my friend Josh are going to do video discussing our thoughts on the second trailer at some point, so be sure to tune in for that. So, which we're going to discuss our thoughts on the trailer, our expectations, our concerns, and kind of what we would like to see in the film. So that's it for this ranking video. Thank you guys for watching, and you think that is over, but the games have only just begun.